Think you've seen it all? From lakes that turn animals into stone to waterfalls that bleed like they re-alive? The world is full of mind-bending mysteries that defy logic and science. In this video, we're uncovering 15 of the strangest, creepiest, most unbelievable things found on Earth. Get ready. Some of these will haunt your imagination forever. Start with number 1 today. We're going to be in New York, USA. We're going to see a small waterfall that has an eternal flame burning behind it. The water flows over a rock face and into a pool below. And if you look closely behind the curtain of flowing water, you can see a faint glow coming from the rock face. As the water hits the rocks below the falls, it causes the flame to flicker and dance in the wind. This is truly a spectacular sight to behold. But what is it about this waterfall that makes it so special? Well, it turns out that this waterfall is fueled by natural gas that seeps out of the ground and burns continuously. There are several places around the world where this occurs, but this is one of the most accessible and beautiful. It's located in a small park in Niagara. It's just a few minutes walk from the famous Niagara Falls. It's not as tall or as wide as its more famous neighbor, but it's no less impressive. In fact, it's often referred to as the sister falls to Niagara Falls. The falls is surrounded by lush vegetation, including a variety of trees and shrubs, which provide a beautiful backdrop for the flames. Visitors can walk right up to the falls and feel the mist on their skin, which is said to have healing properties. There are also a number of hiking trails in the area that offer stunning views of the falls from different perspectives. In addition to its natural beauty, Eternal Flame Falls is also steeped in history. The area has been inhabited by Native Americans for centuries, and there are a number of legends and myths associated with the falls. One of the most popular legends is that the falls was created when a giant turtle was killed by a lightning strike. According to legend, the turtle had been sunning itself on the shore when it was struck by lightning, causing its body to burst and create the falls. Another legend says that the falls was created when a brave warrior jumped into a nearby lake to save his people from a flood. As he jumped, he was transformed into a bird, and the falls was created in his honor. There are also a number of historical figures who have visited the falls, including Thomas Edison, who came to see it in 1885. He was so impressed by the falls that he is said to have declared it the greatest natural wonder of the world. Other famous visitors include Presidents Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin D. Roosevelt, as well as actress and activist Jane Goodall. If you're planning a trip to New York, I highly recommend checking out Eternal Flame Falls. It is a truly unique and unforgettable experience that I think everyone should see at least once in their life. Whether you're interested in nature, history, or just want to see something truly special, this falls has something for everyone. Just be sure to bring your camera. You won't want to forget this experience. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Eternal Flame Falls if you did. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. I have a lot more interesting places to show you all around the world. So until then, I'll see you in the next one. Start with number 2. There's something strange happening in Antarctica. A waterfall that looks like blood is pouring out of a glacier. It might look like a scene from a horror movie, but there's nothing scary about this blood-colored cascade. In fact, it's totally natural. Although it might not be alive, it's definitely not dead either. Hi, and welcome to this channel. The red waterfall you see here is called Blood Falls. As you can imagine, it's located in a place called Antarctica. Yeah, really. The first recorded sighting of this crimson-colored cascade was by an airplane pilot who spotted it while flying over the Brunt ice shelf in 1912. But we didn't get a close-up look at Blood Falls until 1970. When an aerial survey of the area was conducted by a team of scientists. They found that the waterfall originates from a subglacial lake called Lake Bonny, which sits beneath the Filkneron ice shelf. This ice shelf is basically a giant slab of ice that's floating on the ocean, kind of like an iceberg. Only about 60 meters or 200 feet of ice separates Lake Bonny from the surface of the water. The lake is around 4,000 meters or 13,000 feet below sea level. As you can probably already guess, Blood Falls isn't actually made of blood. That would be pretty messed up if it was, but it isn't. Instead, the waterfall is rich in iron, and the red color comes from salt water that's high in iron content oxidizing. Similar to how rust forms on iron or steel when exposed to oxygen and water. The iron in the lake water reacts with oxygen in the air to form iron oxide, which gives the water its reddish hue. Now, the reason why the iron is in the lake in the first place is because the surrounding rocks contain a lot of it. Over time, the water from Lake Bonny seeps into these rocks and picks up the iron. The iron-rich water then flows into the Weddell Sea, where it eventually reaches the surface. What makes Blood Falls so unique is that it's one of the few places on Earth where you can see this type of iron oxidation happening on such a large scale. Most of the iron in the Earth's crust is locked up in rocks and minerals, and so it does and often have the chance to react with oxygen and water to form iron oxide. So we don't see a lot of waterfalls or other natural features that are this color. The area around Blood Falls is a unique ecosystem unto itself. Because the water from Lake Bonny is cut off from the atmosphere, it's anoxic, meaning that it doesn't have any oxygen in it. This creates an environment where only certain types of organisms can survive, like bacteria that use iron compounds as their source of energy. These bacteria are called chemototrophs, and they are similar to plants in that they use carbon dioxide as their source of carbon and make their own food. But unlike plants, they don't use sunlight for energy. Instead, they get their energy from the oxidation of inorganic compounds like iron. In addition to the bacteria, Blood Falls is also home to other organisms like algae, fungi, viruses, and single-celled eukaryotes. Scientists are still learning about the ecosystem around Blood Falls, but it's clear that this is a unique and special place. If you ever get the chance to visit Antarctica, I highly recommend checking it out. Just be sure to bring your passport. Thanks for watching. Start with number 3. There are many lakes in Africa, but today we are focusing on one particular lake that is known for mummifying any animal that comes into contact with it. This lake is extremely salty and alkaline with a pH level of 10.5. To put that into perspective, the pH scale ranges from 0 to 14. The lower the pH, the stronger the acid. The higher the pH, the stronger the base or alkaline. A pH of 7 is neutral, so this lake is very, very alkaline. In fact, it is so alkaline that it can burn a hole through your skin if you were to come into contact with it. If you were to take a swim in this lake, it would literally melt your skin off your body. So what makes this lake so salty and alkaline? Well, it's all thanks to the nearby volcano. The volcano's minerals and salts flow into the lake and over time have made it extremely salty and alkaline. In fact, the amount of salts in this lake is more than double the amount found in the dead. See, now you may be wondering, why do the animals just stay away from this lake if it's so dangerous? Well, for some animals, it is too late because the water in this lake has a very high concentration of sodium carbonate and other minerals. These minerals make the water very dense, so when an animal gets stuck in the water, it's like being stuck in quicksand. But in this case, it's actually worse, because not only are they stuck in the water, but the water is also burning their skin and melting their flesh off their bones. It takes about 2 weeks for an animal to be completely mummified. The salt and minerals dehydrate the animal's body, causing all the water to be sucked out of it. This process is called desiccation. After a few weeks, all that's left is a dry, shriveled up husk of the animal's body. Sometimes the mummification process is interrupted, and the bodies just decompose. However, most of the time the bodies remain intact and can last for years. This lake is truly a remarkable natural phenomenon, and it is a testament to the power of nature. It is truly amazing to think that there are places like this left in our world today. If you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Now let us take a closer look at some of the animals that have been mummified by this lake. One of the most common animals that are mummified by this lake are fish. The dense, salty water is not suitable for most fish, but there are some species that are able to survive in these conditions. However, sometimes the fish get stuck in the water and are unable to escape. Once this happens, they are at the mercy of the lake and will eventually be mummified. Another animal that is often found mummified in this lake is the African jacana. This is a type of bird that is found in Africa and parts of Asia. They are known for their beautiful plumage and their ability to walk on water. However, sometimes they get too close to the lake and are not able to escape. When this happens, they become stuck in the thick, syrupy water and are unable to move. They struggle to free themselves, but the more they struggle, the deeper they sink into the water. Eventually, they are completely submerged and are no match for the powerful currents of the lake. They are then carried to the bottom of the lake, where they are slowly covered in silt and mud, Over time, they are completely encased in a solid mass of sediment. One of the most fascinating things about this lake is that it is home to a variety of different species of birds. This includes species that are found nowhere else in the world. However, sometimes these birds get too close to the lake and are not able to escape the sticky situation. When this happens, they quickly find out that they are no match for the powerful forces of nature. They struggle to free themselves, but the more they struggle, the deeper they sink into the water. Eventually, they are completely submerged and are carried to the bottom of the lake, where they are slowly covered in silt and mud. Over time, they are completely encased in a solid mass of sediment. One of the most amazing things about this lake is that it is home to a variety of different species of reptiles. This includes species that are found nowhere else in the world. However, sometimes these reptiles get too close to the lake and are not able to escape the sticky situation. When this happens, they quickly find out that they are no match for the powerful forces of nature. They struggle to free themselves, but the more they struggle, the deeper they sink into the water. Eventually, they are completely submerged and are carried to the bottom of the lake, where they are slowly covered in silt and mud. Over time, they are completely encased in a solid mass of sediment. Start with number 4. This is the door to hell, also known as the gates to the underworld, and it's located in the country of Turkmenistan. This burning crater is over 200 feet wide and over 200 feet deep, and it's been burning continuously for over 50 years straight since. It was first discovered in 1971, but how did this massive fiery hole appear in the middle of the desert? Why has it been burning for so long? Well, in 1968, Soviet geologists were drilling for natural gas in the area when suddenly their drilling equipment broke through the Earth's crust and created a massive cavity. The hole was filled with natural gas, and when the gas ignited, it created a massive fire that has been burning ever since. At first, the Soviets tried to cap the well, but it was just too big and too deep, so they eventually gave up. They did, however, build a concrete ring around the hole to prevent people from falling in, which is probably a good idea considering that if you were to fall into this hole, you would most likely be burned alive. The crater is located in the middle of the Karakum Desert, which is one of the largest deserts in Central Asia. The desert is home to a variety of different plants and animals, including camels, wolves, and snakes. But none of them seem to mind the giant flaming hole in the middle of their habitat. The temperature inside the crater can reach up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to melt rock and metal. The fire is so hot that it can be seen from miles away, and the flames themselves reach up to 100 feet into the air. Despite the danger, people still visit the crater. In fact, it has become a popular tourist destination. People come from all over the world to see the amazing sight of the burning crater. Some people even take their horses and camels into the crater to sacrifice to the fire. It's not clear why they do this, but it's probably because the crater is seen as a sacred place by the local people. There are a few different legends about the crater. According to one legend, the crater is the entrance to the underworld. Another legend says that the crater is the result of a curse. Yet another legend says that the crater is a portal to another dimension. Of course, these are just legends. There is no evidence that any of them are true, but they are interesting nonetheless. In recent years, the government of Turkmenistan has been trying to find a way to put out the fire. They have spent millions of dollars trying to do so, but so far, they have been unsuccessful. The fire is just too big and too deep. Some people believe that the fire will burn forever. After all, there is an infinite supply of natural gas fueling the fire. Others believe that the fire will eventually run out of gas and go out on its own. Only time will tell what happens. So if you're anywhere near here, be sure to check it out. It really is an amazing sight to see. Just don't go too close. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. Thank you for watching. Start with number 5. This is the Crooked Forest in Poland. It's a grove of pine trees that are all bent at 90-degree angles. And while there are a lot of theories about why they grew that way, nobody knows for sure. The forest is located near the town of Noe, which is about 2 hours north of Warsaw. And it consists of around 400 pine trees that are all between 80 to 120 years old. For decades, the trees were a local mystery, but in recent years they've become an internet sensation. Thousands of people visit the Crooked Forest each year just to see this bizarre natural phenomenon for themselves. The trees are all bent in the same direction, and looked like they were deliberately planted that way. But in reality, they were growing normally until something caused them to all turn at once. The most popular theory is that the trees were intentionally planted at an angle by a gardener at the turn of the 20th century. This would have been during the time when the area was part of the German Empire. The theory goes that the trees were planted as a windbreak to protect crops from the elements. When the wind hit the trees, they would bend over and grow in a way that maximized sunlight exposure. Over the years, they grew into these perfectly angled pines we see today. But there is some evidence that points to a different cause. The trees all seem to be the same species, Pinus sylvestris, also known as the Scotch pine or Scots pine. They grow naturally in Poland and are commonly used for timber, but they don't typically grow with these sorts of bends. In fact, these pines usually grow straight up and down, which makes sense because they're softwood trees. Softwoods are typically fast-growing conifers that don't have the structural rigidity of hardwoods. That means that if something knocks them over, they're not likely to grow upright again. This leads us to another popular theory, that the trees were bent by a storm. If a strong windstorm came through when the trees were young, it could have knocked them all over, and they could have absorbed the shock and continued growing in the direction they were leaning. But if that's true, why did they all grow in the same direction? Was the wind coming from the same direction every single time? Or did something else cause them to all grow that way? There's also some evidence that points to human activity, like how all the trees seem to be the same species. That suggests that somebody probably planted them rather than them growing naturally. But if somebody planted them, why would they plant them at such strange angles? Maybe it was to create a decorative forest, or maybe they were used for some sort of experiment. The truth is, nobody really knows. It's one of those mysteries that's more fun to ponder than it is to actually solve. There is something really intriguing about the idea of a perfectly straight row of trees, suddenly turning at a 90-degree angle and then continuing to grow that way. It's so unnatural that it seems almost alien-like. But whatever the cause, the effect is beautiful. The Crooked Forest is one of the most photographed places in Poland, and it's easy to see why. The trees create a surreal atmosphere that's both beautiful and mysterious. If you ever get the chance to visit, I highly recommend it. Just be respectful of the trees and try to carve your initials into them like some people have done in the past. That's just selfish and stupid. Don't be that guy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching. Start with number 6. When you think of crop circles, you likely imagine a field in the middle of nowhere with some mysterious circular pattern in the crops. But have you ever seen anything like this before? Welcome back, everyone. Here today, we're going to look at these strange underwater crop circles in Japan. Let's get started. In 2008, divers in Japan came across something that was hard to believe. They were looking around the ocean floor when they saw strange patterns carved into the sand. The divers described it as someone had taken a knife and dug perfect circles and lines into the seafloor. They were completely stunned and had no idea what could have made these markings. The divers took photos and posted them online, asking if anyone knew what they had found. After a while, some people came forward and said they knew exactly what it was. But the explanation was far from what the divers had expected. It turned out these circles were made by a type of pufferfish called a sand pufferfish. These fish are known for creating these types of patterns, but why? Scientists don't know the exact reason, but it has to do with attracting a mate. You see, many animals use visual displays to attract a partner. Think of the bright colors of a male bird of paradise, or the elaborate nest a bird builds. The sand pufferfish does something similar. It creates these patterns in the seafloor to attract a mate. But there is one big difference. The sand pufferfish can't actually see the patterns it makes. So how do they know where to carve? Well, scientists think that instead of sight, the fish uses its other senses to create these designs. One theory is that they feel vibrations in the water that help them judge the size and shape of their pattern. Another theory is that they can sense chemicals in the water that form a sort of invisible boundary for the pattern. Whatever the case may be, it's incredible to think that a fish could make such a perfect design without being able to see it. But that's not the only amazing part. You see, the divers who originally found the circles didn't just come across one or two circles. There were hundreds of them. And that means dozens or maybe even hundreds of pufferfish had been busy creating these designs. But there was more. As the divers continued exploring, they came across an entire field of circles. There must have been thousands of them. Researchers later returned to the area to observe the pufferfish making their patterns. They wanted to understand how the fish made the circles and whether all the circles were made by one fish or many. What they found was fascinating. Each circle was made by a single fish, and each fish would make several circles. But here's the thing. The circles were perfectly spaced out. Researchers realized that the pufferfish were making these circles in a communal area. It was almost as if they were creating a giant underwater city. Today, these underwater crop circles are considered an important part of the ecosystem. They are a great example of how animals can use tools in an elaborate way to attract a mate. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll find a message hidden in one of these patterns. Now it's time to make your voice heard. Comment below, which was the most amazing part of this video. Was it the divers discovering the circles? The fact that pufferfish make these patterns to attract a mate, or the incredible field of circles that they found? Start with number 7. Did you know there's a cave in Romania where life has evolved in isolation for 5.5 million years? It's not your typical cave. For starters, it's been sealed off from the outside world for so long that it has its own unique atmosphere, and that atmosphere is deadly to humans. Now, if you were to take a deep breath, you would be met with the smell of rotten eggs. This is because the air inside the cave is filled with 92% carbon dioxide and only 8% oxygen. The air is also incredibly humid, with temperatures ranging from 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. Now, this may sound like the perfect environment for a nice relaxing vacation, but it's actually far from it. In fact, if you were to stay in this cave for more than a few minutes, you would likely pass out and die. But despite these harsh conditions, life still finds a way. In fact, there are many different species of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and even animals that have made their homes inside this cave. The most famous of these are the cave harvestmen. These little arachnids are the only known animals that can live in such a hostile environment. They've evolved over the past 5.5 million years to be able to survive on almost no oxygen. They can sense danger through vibrations and have extremely long lifespans, up to 100 years. But the story of how these amazing creatures ended up in this cave is actually quite sad. See, they didn't choose to live here. They were actually trapped here when the cave collapsed millions of years ago. Since then, they've had to adapt to the low oxygen levels or die. But just how did this cave even form? Well, it all started when the Surt de Mare River flooded an underground cavern. This created a deep pool of water that eventually became a lake. Over time, the river's flow changed and the lake was left high and dry. But the water wasn't the only thing that was trapped. In fact, the flood also trapped a bunch of microorganisms, including the ancestors of today's cave harvestmen. At first, these creatures probably struggled to survive. After all, the cave was now devoid of oxygen and light. But over time, they began to adapt. They evolved to be able to sense danger through vibrations in the cave. This is because they lost their eyes and other sensory organs that are unnecessary in an underground cave. Their metabolism slowed down and they became incredibly efficient at conserving energy. This is why they can live so long. But it wasn't just the microorganisms that evolved. The lack of oxygen and light also led to the formation of unique minerals and crystals. These can be found all over the cave and make for some truly stunning sights. But despite all of the amazing things that have evolved in this cave, it's still a pretty dangerous place for humans. That's because the air is just so poisonous. It's actually illegal to go into the cave without a special permit. This is in place to protect both the cave and the people who explore it. But even with these precautions, there have still been a few deaths. In fact, one man died in the 1980s after he accidentally breathed in some of the cave's air. Despite all of the danger, scientists are still incredibly interested in this cave. This is because it's one of the few places on Earth where life has evolved in complete isolation. By studying the creatures that live here, we can learn more about how life adapts to extreme environments. We can also learn more about how these creatures evolved and what might happen to them in the future. One of the most exciting things about this cave is that we still do and know everything about it. There are still many areas that have never been explored and many secrets that are yet to be discovered. Who knows what other amazing things will be found in this cave in the years to come. If you want to learn more about this incredible place, be sure to check out the links in the description. Start with number 8. There are places on Earth where the water glows blue at night. Not just a little blue either. but so bright that it lights up entire bays and makes for some incredibly beautiful views. Most of us have seen bioluminescence in action before, whether it's fireflies flashing their light in the summer night or the glowing embers of a bonfire. But did you know there are also microscopic organisms that can light up the night? Bioluminescence is an incredible natural phenomenon that can be witnessed in many parts of the world, including these magical bays in Puerto Rico. These bays are located near the capital city of San Juan. They're full of microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates. These tiny cells, which are only visible under a microscope, contain special proteins that emit light when they're disturbed. The light they emit is a beautiful blue color, which is why these bays are known as the blue glowing bays of Puerto Rico. The reason why these microscopic cells glow blue at night is because they have a pigment called chlorophyll. This is the same pigment that gives plants their green color. But unlike plants, these organisms use their chlorophyll to generate light. They do this through a process called bioluminescence, which is similar to the way that fireflies produce light. In fact, fireflies are the only insects that can produce light. And they do this by reacting oxygen with a substance called luciferin. Luciferin is a small molecule that's found in all living things. It's what gives us our skin, its glow, and it's what makes our eyes sparkle. When these microscopic cells are disturbed, the chlorophyll inside of them reacts with oxygen and emits a blue light. This happens when you move the water, like when you stir it, or when a boat passes through it. It also happens when the water evaporates, which is why the edges of these bays are often glowing. The light that these organisms produce is very faint, but when there are a lot of them together, it can be very bright. It's not uncommon for these bays to glow so brightly at night that they can light up entire beaches and make for some incredible views. In addition to being beautiful, these glowing bays are also an important part of the ecosystem. The microscopic cells that live here are called phytoplankton. It's just like plants. Phytoplankton use sunlight to produce energy. This energy is then used by larger organisms, such as jellyfish and fish. So the phytoplankton are an important food source for these animals. The phytoplankton also play an important role in the carbon cycle, absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and store it in their cells. When they die, they sink to the bottom of the ocean and eventually turn into fossil fuels. Unfortunately, these amazing bays are under threat. Pollution from nearby cities is making the water cloudy, and this is preventing the phytoplankton from getting enough sunlight. If this trend continues, it's possible that these beautiful bays will stop glowing. Now, you might be wondering if there are other places on Earth where you can see bioluminescent bays, and the answer is yes. In fact, there are many places around the world where you can see this amazing phenomenon. Some of the best places to see bioluminescent bays are in the United States, Puerto Rico, VX Island, and Fajardo, as well as in Thailand, the Maldives, and Indonesia. Bioluminescence is an incredible natural phenomenon that can light up the night sky. It's a reminder of the amazing biodiversity that exists on our planet. So if you ever get the chance to visit one of these glowing bays, be sure to do it. It's an experience you'll never forget. Start with number 9. In today's video, we will be traveling to France to explore the catacombs of Paris. Be sure to stay until the end to find out why over 6 million skeletons were stacked under the streets of Paris in a vast underground tunnel system. Before we start, have you subscribed? It only takes a second and really helps us keep making great videos. Also, if you join our community, you can help us pick the next place we'll explore. Let's jump in. The Catacombs of Paris is a tunneling maze system located beneath the city of Paris, France. This underground labyrinth is home to over 6 million skeletons and is one of the largest mass graves in the world. The story of the catacombs begins during the French Revolution, when the Paris cemetery became overcrowded due to the mass executions that were taking place. The first place people thought to use as an alternative cemetery was the Chapel of the Madeleine, which is where the catacombs would eventually get their name. Since it was already an established cemetery, it had underground tunnels and chambers for storing bodies. However, this was not a very appealing option. Since the chapel was located in the center of Paris, and the smell from the decaying bodies would quickly make its way to the nostrils of the citizens. After the suggestion of the Marquis de Sade, who we have an entire video about, the government decided to use the abandoned quarries just outside of Paris as mass graves. For those who don't know, the Marquis de Sade was a French nobleman who lived from 1740 to 1814. He was also a writer and philosopher, whose work often explored themes of sexuality, sadism, and human nature. Despite his controversial legacy, Todd's work had a significant influence on the development of Western's literature and philosophy, and he remains a fascinating and enigmatic figure in history. If you want to learn more about him, be sure to check out our video on him. Anyway, the first use of the quarries began in 1785 with the disinterment of the Paris cemetery. The process of moving the bodies was extremely laborious, since all of them had to be carried out by hand. To make things worse, several of the corpses had been entombed in concrete. Even with all of these obstacles, by 1804, over 6 million bodies had been transferred to the catacombs. Another reason why the catacombs became so popular as a burial site was because of the beliefs surrounding the area at the time. Many people believed that the bones of those buried in the catacombs had healing powers. This led to a black market trade in catacomb bones, people digging up the bones of loved ones and selling them to be ground into powder and used as medicine. This practice continued until the early 20th century. In addition to the bodies buried in the catacombs, there are also a number of artifacts from the French Revolution, including the guillotine used to execute Marie Antoinette. Unfortunately, most of these artifacts have been lost or destroyed over the years. But there are still a few pieces that remain, such as a drawing of the entrance to the main gallery of the catacombs and a model of the quarry system. These artifacts can be found in the Museum of the French Revolution in Paris. While the catacombs were being used as a burial site, there were several attempts to clean up the area and make it more sanitary. In the early 19th century, the French government considered opening the catacombs to the public as a kind of macabre tourist attraction. This plan was eventually abandoned, but it gives us an idea of how the catacombs were perceived at the time. Eventually, the catacombs were closed in 1860, when the city of Paris expanded and new cemeteries were opened. Today, the catacombs are a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a popular tourist destination. Visitors can explore the tunnels and see the bones of the over 6 million people who died here. It's important to note that while the catacombs are a fascinating historical site, they are also a place of death and suffering. It's important to be respectful when visiting and to remember the millions of people who died here. So what do you think? Would you visit the catacombs? Let us know in the comments below. Start with number 10. Are you hearing it? It's a mysterious low-frequency hum that's been driving people crazy all over the world. And despite it being reported for decades, we still don't know where it's coming from. What is this sound, you may ask? Well, it's not the plot of a horror movie. It's actually something that thousands of people around the world have reported hearing at some point in their lives. A low rumble or hum that seems to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some say it sounds like this, others say it sounds more like this. But regardless of exactly what it sounds like, one thing is certain: it's been driving people nuts. In fact, back in 2017, a paper was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration that called the hum a, quote, Lech-Mich-Rorschach test of acoustic research. The authors argued that because the sound is so subjective and variable, it can't possibly be real. In other words, they thought it was all in our heads. But a lot of people are pretty adamant that this is not the case. So who are you going to believe? Some random scientists or your lying bank account? Just kidding, I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm here to help you get to the bottom of this mystery. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is the hum, and how many people are affected by it? Well, according to a survey conducted between 2008 and 2012, nearly 4% of people in the US, around 11 million people, reported hearing the hum. And we've got reports of people hearing it all over the world, including Australia, India, Japan, Canada, Germany, and the UK. Not only that, but hearing the hum seems to affect men and women equally and occurs across all age groups. But just because something is widespread doesn't mean that it's real. After all, just because a lot of people reported seeing a UFO in the sky doesn't mean that there really was a UFO. Could the hum be a similar case of mass hysteria? Well, it might be tempting to dismiss the hum as auditory hallucinations, but it doesn't really explain why so many people around the world would be experiencing the exact same hallucination. Plus, if it were a hallucination, why does it seem to come from a specific direction sometimes? For example, back in 2011, researchers at a university in Bristol, UK, conducted an experiment to see if they could identify the direction of the hum. they found that 70% of participants believed that the noise was coming from below ground, while 30% believed it was coming from above. Even more interesting, they found that participants were able to correctly identify the direction of the hum 75% of the time. And if that sounds impressive, it's because it is. That level of accuracy is about the same as human echolocation. But wait, it gets weirder. Some people report that they can move the hum by moving their bodies in specific ways. For example, one person reported in a study that they could, quote, move it around by swaying my body from side to side, as in a Mexican wave motion. Of course, this doesn't prove that the hum is real any more than someone moving a non-existent ghost around by waving their arms would prove that ghosts are real. But hang on, because we've saved the weirdest part of this mystery for last. According to some reports, the hum varies in pitch and volume depending on the time of day. In fact, it seems to get louder during the day when machinery is typically running and quieter at night. And that makes perfect sense if the hum is coming from machinery, right? It's like an air conditioner or a refrigerator. But here's the kicker. People report hearing the hum even when there's no machinery around. And it's not just a vague rumbling in the distance. It's loud enough to, quote, wake you up at night. One teenager even said that the noise, quote, sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard and is loud enough that I coo and sleep or concentrate on schoolwork. So do we have an answer yet? Well, unfortunately, it seems like the jury is still out on this one. There isn't a consensus in the scientific community on whether the hum is real or not. Some argue that it's a genuine acoustic phenomenon, and others argue that it's all in our heads. But you know what? I think there's something else going on here. Maybe the hum isn't real in the sense that it's not a physical sound. Maybe it's a metaphor for the sound that all of our devices make. You know, the constant worry of computers and cell phones and TVs and speakers. Maybe we're so used to living in a technological sea of sound that we've created a new normal. One that's so normalized that it's become invisible to us. Thanks for watching. Now check out Why Is This Fruit So Scary? Or watch. Can a broken heart actually kill you? Start with number 11. This is Spotted Lake in Canada. It looks like someone took a giant paintbrush and went to town on this lake, but that's not the case. In summer, the lake dries up and becomes a huge salt flat with strange, colorful circles. So why does the lake turn into a salt flat? Well, the water here evaporates faster than it can be replaced. So as the water level drops, the salt content of the lake increases. When it reaches a certain point, the water can no longer dissolve the minerals in the rocks around it, so they start to crystallize and form these cool-looking circles. The minerals here are mostly calcium, magnesium, and iron. They create these cool spots of yellow, orange, green, and red. There are also some other minerals that we couldn't identify. But there are so many different types of minerals here that it kind of looks like a rainbow. But wait, there's more. The lake is also full of strange sculptures that look like giant insects or something out of a sci-fi movie. These are called desert roses, and they form when water seeps down through the cracks in the rocks and comes into contact with air. This causes the minerals inside the water to crystallize and form these cool shapes. These sculptures can grow to be hundreds of feet tall, but most of them are small enough for you to walk around inside of them. So if you're ever near here, make sure to check it out. We'll leave the location of this lake in the description below. Now, Spotted Lake isn't the only place on Earth where you can see these colorful salt flats. There are actually quite a few places around the world where similar things happen. For example, there's the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, which is the largest salt flat on Earth. And there's the Dead Sea in Israel, which is so salty that it's actually impossible for anything to live in it. But Spotted Lake is our favorite because it's just so colorful. Hey, don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more amazing places from all around the world. Travel full-time in a van, and we visit as many national parks and natural areas as we can. So if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure to stay tuned. Start with number 12. Deep in the remote Himalayas. A new lake has recently formed, filled with hundreds of ancient skeletons. This mysterious phenomenon has scientists baffled and locals scared. What's going on here? Let's find out. This is Skeleton Lake, or Rupkund, in the Indian state of Uttarakhand. Every summer, when the ice melts, hundreds of skeletons appear. The local people believe that this lake is haunted and they avoid it at all costs. But what's really happening here? In 1942, British colonial surveyors spotted this lake for the first time. It was covered in ice, so they couldn't see what was underneath. They named it after the nearby village of Rupkund and moved on. Then in 1986, an Indian Army patrol came across the lake again. By this time, the ice had melted, and they could see hundreds of human skulls and skeletons floating in the water. The Army patrol was scared and they ran away. Later that year, some villagers braved the dangerous climb to the lake to collect some of the bones for a Hindu ceremony. When they reached the lake, they found something incredible. All the skeletons seemed to be wearing clothes and carrying belongings like staffs and backpacks. Some of them even had shoes on. Was this an ancient burial ground? Did these people jump into the lake to commit suicide? Or were they all murdered? The mystery only deepened. Scientists finally got involved and started to study the skeletons. They estimated that most of the skeletons belonged to young men aged between 20 and 40 years old. They also found a wide variety of personal belongings, including sandals, iron tools, pottery, cowrie shells, and even mummies. Some of these items dated back to the 3rd century BCE. Others were much more recent, like a 19th century British military belt buckle. Researchers believe that the skeletons may have belonged to traders, pilgrims, or soldiers from many different eras who died and were buried near the lake. But there was still one big question. What caused all these people to die? To answer this question, we need to go back to 1857 back then. The British colonial army was busy putting down a rebellion in the central part of India. They marched through the northern Indian town of Nagibabad and stole everything they could find. Then they burned the city to the ground. Some people managed to escape the massacre and flee to the mountains. They told stories of an army that never slept, always hungry and always thirsty for blood. To this day, nobody knows exactly what happened to them. But researchers think that they might have stumbled upon the skeleton lake and gotten lost. Another theory is that they were fleeing from the British Army and accidentally fell into the lake and drowned. But why were their bodies left here instead of being buried properly? Researchers think that the survivors might have been so scared of the British Army that they didn't stop to bury their dead friends and family members. They probably just kept running for their lives. But what about the more recent skeletons? How did they end up in the lake? Well, it turns out that this area used to be a popular pilgrimage route thousands of years ago. So some of the older skeletons probably belonged to pilgrims who died on their way to the lake. As for the more recent skeletons, researchers think that they might have been victims of the 19th century. British campaign to put down a rebellion. Whoever they were, they ended up in the lake and became trapped in the ice. Since 1986, scientists have returned to the lake every year to try and solve the mystery. They've collected DNA samples from the skeletons and compared them with other ancient DNA from the area, but so far they haven't found anything useful. The truth is, we may never know what happened here. As the ice continues to melt in the coming years, more and more secrets will be revealed. But until then, the locals will continue to tell scary stories about the haunted lake, and nobody will go near it. So what do you think happened at Skeleton Lake? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Start with number 13. This is incredible India. This is incredible Canada. And this is incredible USA. Cars rolling uphill, defying the laws of gravity, balancing on a hill without an engine, without a driver, just balancing there as if by magic. How is this even possible? It seems like a miracle, doesn't it? But it isn't. It's science. It's physics. It's geometry, actually. It's all about perspective, optical illusion, a play of light and heavy, just like the movie Inception. What you see here is called Magnetic Hill, also known as Gravity Hill or the Inception Hill. It's a place where the laws of physics seem to be reversed, and cars can roll uphill all by themselves. There are 3 such places in the world. One is near New Delhi in India, one is in Canada, and the other one is in the United States of America. All 3 places have one thing in common. They have a hill with a very specific geometric shape. I'll come back to the science in a bit, but first let me show you some footage from the spot near New Delhi. This is a busy road. There's a small shop here selling water and some snacks. And right opposite it, cars are lined up, waiting to take the magical ride up the hill. This car, for example, is going up the hill all by itself. Another one, same thing. A few people are standing next to it, just to make sure it doesn't go too far. A bus is going up the hill. 2 trucks are going up the hill. Sometimes they have to reverse a little to get the momentum going, but once they're going, they're good to go. Here's another one. Three cars are going up the hill: a white SUV, a red hatchback, and a blue truck. Truck has a little more difficulty getting started, but once it does, it's smooth sailing. This family is enjoying the ride of their lives. The husband is sitting in the front, wife and kids in the back. No one's driving. They're all just sitting there as the car goes up the hill. You may think this is dangerous. Cars could roll away from the hill, crash into the shops or the houses nearby, but that's not really possible. There's a very specific geometry to this hill, which prevents that from happening. The angle of the road is between 12 to 18 degrees. It's not enough for a car to keep going once it reaches the top. The road then flattens out and the cars stop. It's as simple as that. Here's how it works. When a car comes to a stop at the bottom of the hill, it gains some momentum. If the angle of the hill is less than 18 degrees, that momentum is enough to push the car up the hill. Once the car reaches the top, the slope of the hill becomes less than 12 degrees and the car stops. In Canada, the hill is close to the town of St. John's. In the US, it's in the state of Utah. By the way, there are many such illusions around the world. There's one near Mumbai, for example. We tried it out. It didn't work because the road was too steep. Then there's the waterfall that flows upwards. Have you seen it? It's near Bangalore. But these hills are special because they have been defying gravity since forever. They're a constant reminder that the world is full of wonders, that there's still so much we don't know, so much we can't explain. So the next time you're near New Delhi, take a trip to this hill. It's about 14 kilometers from the city center. Go on an empty stomach and don't forget to carry your camera. Start with number 14. This is the Gates of Hell spiderwebs. They're found here in Australia. And this is one of the scariest things that I've ever seen. Imagine if you're driving through the outback and all of a sudden you see these massive fields in the distance. You pull up and you walk out into this area and you realize that it's covered in these webs. And these webs are so thick in some places that they look like they're moving. But when you get closer, you realize that it's just filled with spiders. Some people have compared it to a horror movie scene, and I can definitely see why. The good news is that these webs are mostly made by one species of spider called the Hylis diaminius. They create these webs after a flood or a migration of some sort, so we know that there's water involved. Also know that there's a lot of spiders involved. These webs can stretch over hundreds of acres, and they can be over 6 feet tall. Just imagine getting lost in one of these. You'd probably never get out. I think what's even more crazy about these webs is how perfectly they're laid out. If you zoom in, you can see that each spider has created its own little web, and they all connected together in this massive network. It's almost like a spider city. And if you look closely at the center of each web, you'll see a spider waiting for its meal to get caught. Now, I don't want to scare you, but there have been cases of people being blinded by these spiders or going into anaphylactic shock because of their bite. So if you're ever in this part of Australia, make sure you watch your step because you don't want to get too close to one of these spiders. The good news is that these spiders actually help us out by eating other insects. Some of these insects can be pests, like the codling moth, which can damage crops. So by eating them, these spiders are helping us out. These gates of hell were first described back in the 1800s, so we've known about them for quite a while. But it wasn't until recently that we started learning more about them. For example, we didn't know what species of spider was making them until 2021. That S, when scientists finally identified the spider as the Hylis diaminius. They also found out that these spiders only make these webs after a flood or a migration. So it's not something that they do all the time. There are 3 main parts to this spider web. There's the outer layer, which is made of a strong silk that's used to create the basic shape of the web. Then there's the inner layer, which is made of a sticky silk that's used to catch food. And finally, there's the anchor points, which are the small threads that connect the web to the ground. These anchor points are really important because they keep the web from blowing away in the wind. So now you know just a little bit more about the Gates of Hell spider webs. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for watching. Start with number 15. This is Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. It's the world's largest salt flat, and it can become a giant mirror during the rainy season. Here's why. The salt flat is located 3,650 meters above sea level, covers an area of 10,582 square kilometers, and it's 5,500 years old. But how does it turn into a giant mirror? Well, here's where things get interesting. Every year from December to March, Bolivia experiences its rainy season. The water that falls on the salt flat creates a shallow pool of water on the surface. As the water evaporates, it leaves behind a thin layer of water that is so shallow that it's almost invisible to the naked eye. This layer of water is what allows the flat to reflect the sky. It's like walking on the sky. The salt flat is also home to the world's largest cactus, the Bolivian whip cactus. These cacti can grow up to 13 feet tall and live for over 200 years. They are perfectly adapted to the harsh environment of the salt flat, and they are a popular tourist attraction. But the salt flat isn't just a natural wonder, it's also an important part of Bolivia's history and culture. The indigenous people of the area have been harvesting salt from the flat for centuries, and it was an important part of their diet. The Spanish also recognized the importance of the salt flat, and they built a town nearby called Uyun. The town was originally a mining camp, but it soon became a center for the production and distribution of salt. Today, the salt flat and the town of Uyun are a popular tourist destination. People come from all over the world to see the unique landscape and to learn about Bolivia's history. Tourists can explore the salt flat by foot or by bike, and they can also take boat tours on the shallow pools of water. One of the most popular activities on the salt flat is taking photos. The flat's unique landscape provides a stunning backdrop for photos and videos, and many tourists go there specifically to capture the beauty of the place. Some tourists even dress up in costumes and props to add a little extra fun to their photos. But the salt flat is not without its problems. In recent years, the amount of water on the flat has been decreasing, which has made it more difficult to harvest salt. The water that does flow through the flat is often contaminated with mining waste, which has also hurt the local economy. Despite these challenges, the people of Bolivia are working hard to protect the salt flat and its unique ecosystem. So if you ever get the chance to visit Salar de Uyuni, I highly recommend it. It's a truly unique place that will leave you in awe. Now it's time to test your knowledge. How much do you remember about Bolivia? Take our quiz to find out. And if you liked this video, be sure to subscribe for more fun geography videos. Thanks for watching.